How exactly do credit cards affect your credit score? Now I do warn, I've tried to film this video like 3 times and I can't seem to talk today, but basically a lot of people know that credit cards can really raise your credit score or they can make your credit score drop. Personally, for me, it made my credit score drop 20 points. So do I find it worth it? I've done so many videos on first credit cards that give you the most cash back. So after signing up for all those said cards, do I find it worth it?
Was it even worth it?
Now, what are those factors that actually make up that score and determine this random number that somehow affects your life? So those are going to be payment history, credit card use, age of your credit, the total accounts you have open, hard inquiries. Now before we continue, please hit that like button and that subscribe button down below. It really helps a girl out. Now for payment history, we're gonna go over that one first because that actually makes up the highest percent of factors in your score, and that is 35%. So what is payment history? It's actually pretty self-explanatory. Payment history is the amount of times you pay back your credit you borrowed on time. Now, that does not mean every type of payment or every type of charge. And if you are mostly using a debit card, then that is not going to go towards your payment history. So just because you are regularly paying with a debit card and paying off whatever you are buying, it doesn't mean it's going to help your payment history score, which means it's not going to be helping your credit score, which means these other factors that you might not be looking at could be making a huge difference, and you're not doing the one thing that could help you most with payment history. Now, that's not saying that everything done with debit can't help your payment history, because things like rent, utilities, phone bills, I think there's a few more. If you work with a third party, in most cases, those can go towards helping your payment history, like using Experian Boost. You know, the thing you see all the time on the commercials, they're like, we'll raise your credit score. And that's because they will use that regular healthy payments, meaning that you are regularly paying on time for those bills, and they will report them to the credit bureau because in most cases they are not reported, which means it doesn't help your payment history percentage. But they will help you report those numbers, so if you have that healthy history of payments, it can help your credit score. Now, that's not saying that every phone bill, utility, rent payment can actually help towards your credit score, because if you're not paying on time, then it definitely can't help you, and don't do it. But the main thing is that not everybody's is going to work. I personally signed up for Experian Boost, and it did not raise my credit score at all. I have a utility bill, and it did not find that utility bill, it did not recognize it, and it did not help my credit score. So that is a lot of the reason why I wanted credit cards, because credit cards can make it so you can make healthy on-time payments. But you have to have the accounts first to be able to make those healthy payments. So what I do is I pay most of the balance and I leave about 1% on the card for the due date. And I actually set up the payment ahead of time and I make it so that it pays that small amount on the due date. And after a certain amount of time, that shows as healthy payments towards my card. And we will go into why I only leave 1% on the card, because of something very important that affects your credit score, and that is utilization. We'll go over that one next because that's the next highest thing that affects your credit score. But first, I want to talk about payment history because I slightly mentioned this before, and that's the idea of not paying on time. And this is where credit cards can tank your credit score. It can make it go down a significant amount, because if you end up signing up for a bunch of cards and you don't pay them on time and you don't have those healthy payment histories, then it can bring down your credit score because they do not trust that you will pay on time for the credit that you are borrowing, meaning your credit score will go down because you are not trustworthy. Basically, the hugest factor is trust. And they determine trust by you paying on time. Now, just because you are a great person and you try to pay your cards on time, that does not mean that this can't be an area that hurts you, because you could honestly forget about a card. You could have some random store card that you forgot that you charged $5 on it, and that can bring down your credit score because you didn't make that payment. So what I recommend doing is for all of your cards, setting up an automatic payment for the minimum amount due. Now, that is saying that if you have a high amount minimum due, you might not want to do this because you might not be able to afford to make those payments, blah, 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 and this could cause other bad things to happen. But for the most part, you want to set up a minimum amount due on the due date, so just in case something happens and you forget, because I have forgotten one time. I forgot one time. but I had the minimum amounts set up, so it was fine, but it allows you to have a just in case backup. But now I want to talk about the utilization, because that is so gosh darn important, because that makes up 30% of your score. So the last one was 35, this one's 30, which means it is also very important. And this is actually determined by the amount you charge to the card left as a balance compared to the whole amount you have available to you, your credit limit in most cases. So if you add up all of that money and you add up all the money you did not pay before the due date, which is actually not the day that it is due, a lot of times these credit card companies report to the credit bureau before the due date. So it means even if you pay on the due date or a couple days before, depending on when they report, it can still show as a high amount of utilization, and then it compares it to the total amount you owe. So let's say you only have a credit card limit of $500 and you charge $400. That means you used a lot of your credit. And that can really affect your score, because they want to make sure that you aren't borrowing a lot of the money that they allow you to borrow. It's a very weird concept. And that weirdness aside, there are mixed opinions on the ideal percentage of credit utilization. Now, I've done a lot of research and watched a lot of videos and read a lot of articles online, and from what I can see, the ideal number is about 1%, not 0. Which might sound kind of silly, because they're like, oh wait, they want me to have a low utilization, why not just have 0? And 0 is actually not ideal, because they want to see that you're actually borrowing the money that you're allowed to borrow, but they also don't want you to borrow too much of it. So 1% I've seen as about the ideal amount. Now do your own research, and I do understand that for a lot of people, existing credit card debt, which might be the case for you, affects your ability to have 1%. But ideally, you do not want to have any more than 30% of your utilization of your total available credits. Now, how exactly do credit cards help and hurt this number? Now, it would be very bad if you decided to open up a bunch of lines of credit and keep a high balance. If you plan on keeping a high balance and not paying it before the due date, then it's probably not a good idea to sign up for these credit cards, even if you want the sign-up bonuses and the cash back. If you know you can't pay it a couple days before the due date, then it's probably not worth it, because the money will not be worth the amount of credit drop that you're going to get if you plan on spending a lot of money on it to get all these extra benefits. Now, that being said, it can also help you a lot, because it can bring up the total amount of credit you have available to you. So I'm not saying if you have a bunch of credit card debt you should sign up for more cards, but the one thing to note is if you do all of a sudden get an increase in your credit limit, or you get another card, this can help bring down your utilization number if you have existing debt. But there's a lot more factors that go into it, so it's not as simple as that. Now, utilization was not a big factor in getting or not getting a credit card for me, but it can be for a lot of other people, like maybe you. It could be the reason why you decide to not get another credit card that you were planning on getting, because you do not want to affect that utilization. Or maybe it is a reason why you want to get a credit card. Whatever the reason, the next one I want to talk about briefly is derogatory marks, because utilization reminds me of derogatory marks. And this one I'm just going to slip in there quickly because it is a big factor. So derogatory marks are basically when you do not pay on time. And a lot of times it's when it goes to collections, because the company basically gave up on you paying and they send it to collections. Now, for me personally, I accidentally had a medical bill go to collections. So a while ago that was affecting my credit score. So it is important to keep in mind that keep track of things that are going on with you, because things can happen on accident. Now, for me, that bill was not supposed to go to collections. I didn't even know it was due yet. It was sent to the wrong address. But either way, that means you have to keep track of these things, because they can make a huge difference on your credit score, even when they aren't related to credit cards. But the next one I do want to go over that is very much related to credit cards is hard inquiries. And that can be a big factor in applying for credit cards or not applying for them. Or this could have already affected your credit score because you already applied for a bunch of credit cards. And hard inquiries are basically companies looking into your credit score. I think it is ridiculous that your credit score should drop when someone wants to look into your credit, because it's a normal process of applying for credit cards, applying for loans, applying for apartments, yet it goes down on your credit score in most cases. And since we cannot change that, we are going to work with what we have. And we're going to keep in mind that this isn't just credit cards. Like I said, it can be applying for an apartment. It can be applying for a loan, like a car loan, a student loan. These can all be inquiries on your credit score that can affect your score. Now, that being said, I find it very important to follow a few golden rules, and that is applying for only things that you actually need. And I cannot determine the answer to that question for you, and also only applying for things that are worth it. So maybe wait a little bit longer to apply for that credit card and wait for the last inquiry to go away, because the other thing that I think is very important to remember is the fact of do not apply for too many things at once. Now, there are some exceptions to this, because there are certain things, if you apply for them in a certain window of time, even though it's more than one thing, it'll only be one hard inquiry. But for the most part, you don't want to apply for one credit card and then 2 weeks later apply for another one. Yeah, the sign-up bonuses are going to be great, and I have plenty of videos with amazing sign-up bonuses for credit cards, but I would not recommend applying for them all at once or very close together. You want to wait it out and wait for another inquiry to drop, or in general just wait a longer period of time. And also, it's not a set number. So just because you inquired for something one time and it drops your score 5 points, it doesn't mean the next time that you do it with something else it's going to be 5 points. It changes. And I also did notice that if I applied to something a little bit quicker, it was a larger drop than it was when I waited a little bit longer. But these are a lot of things that you don't have per se control over, except for do not apply for too many things at once. The next factor in your credit score is actually credit age, and that makes up 10% of your score. So that's still a pretty good number. And unfortunately, unlike our age, which is based on one number, when we're born, that day, and that determines our age, credit age is not the same thing. It's actually an average based on all your forms of credit. So even if you have one very old account, for me personally, it is my student loans. It's not that old though, because I'm not that old. But either way, that is my first ever account. I didn't end up signing up for credit cards around that time period. So just because that number is a little bit older, all my recent accounts are newer, and it goes off of the average age. Now, because it's an average, there's two sides of the coin. And coin side one would be, let's say you wanted to close an old account. Closing old accounts can bring up your credit age, which can bring down your credit score because of the fact that these accounts are older. They have that history and your new accounts don't, which means if you close it, it can, again, like I said, bring up that age. So I only recommend closing old accounts if you are being charged a fee. So if you have a credit card with a yearly fee and you do not want to be paying it, and it's really high and it's not worth it, or you have a minimum amount you have to spend on the card and you really don't see that as realistic, then yeah, I would say close the account. It might be worth it, because I in general don't recommend having any cards that have yearly fees or minimums on them. Now, that being said, if it doesn't have a yearly fee, you kind of should keep it. I understand maybe you just won't want to have the convenience of not having that card, or whatever reasons I have heard from so many people on why they want to close an old account. I wouldn't do it. It's just not worth it to me, in my opinion, to affect your credit age, because you don't want to have the inconvenience of having an account that doesn't charge you a fee. I don't really see the effects of that. Now, there is one thing to keep in mind, that some accounts do close if you do not make at least one purchase a year. Now, every account is different on how they determine when your account closes if you don't use it. But again, I would still say in most cases, it's worth it to keep it open. Now, the flip side of the coin is, what if you want to open a bunch of new accounts? How does this affect your credit age? Like we talked about before, it's probably going to bring it down, because all these accounts are going to have a less than 1 year history, and that's going to bring your average years down on your credit age. Now, I'm not saying that this is always a bad thing. When it comes to your credit score and credit cards, it's a give and a take. You can't always have all good benefits. Some things are going to affect your credit score that might be worth it in the long run, and this might be one of those. To start, it is important, like I said, to have enough accounts open that have history on them. And if you don't have that pre-existing history with a lot of accounts, you might want to start now. Because for me personally, if I end up paying off my student loans and I didn't have any new stuff going on or new forms of credit, then once that drops drops off, my credit age is going to go down by a significant amount if I don't have enough other accounts that are also old. So if I decided to only have that student loan and never apply for any other forms of credit, once that goes away, my credit score will tank, which sounds ridiculous because I just paid off my student loans. That would be great and fantastic. But no, you want to have enough accounts open that have history. Now, after all that talk, you might be wondering, how many accounts should I actually have? Because I shouldn't open too many accounts at once, but I should have enough accounts open to create history and all these different things that make you wonder, like, what is the right amount? And there's not one clear set number. Even Credit Karma used to have a thing that showed you have this amount accounts open, but this amount is ideal, and this amount is even better. But they actually took that feature away and did not give you an exact number. And because it's not as simple as how many accounts, because a lot of it's actually affected by diversity of those forms of credit. So diversifying between credit cards, student loans or car loans, and like store cards, and just different forms of credit instead of just one set type. Because even if you have a bunch of accounts open and they're only one form, it still might not help your total accounts open as much as it would if you diversified it, like you should diversify your stocks. But either way, that aside, to be serious, it is important, but it is also important to open enough accounts and have enough forms of credit. So for me personally, I didn't want to open up a car loan. I can't buy a house right now. Well, I could, but not what I'm looking to buy. But either way, I don't want to take out a home loan. And I already have a student loan. I don't want to take out another one. So I kind of was looking at credit cards and opening enough of those accounts because I do already have a student loan one, and again, I don't want to apply for those other twos, but I still want to get enough accounts open. So that's not saying that you shouldn't have a couple of the same type of credit lines, because you still need to have a lot of accounts open, at least a lot in my opinion, because I'm like, why do I need that many? I am like, it's kind of crazy. But either way, that being said, I still found it important to open those accounts and help get that total amount open and help bring up my credit score. So that is a way that credit cards can actually help you, because that can increase your total amount of accounts open. Now, are credit cards worth a drop in your credit score? Because in most cases, credit cards are going to drop your credit score when you're first applying for them. I would say 100,000% yes. Because if you are using them right, credit cards are one of the easiest ways to bring up your credit score within your control and pretty easily and quickly. Now, that being said, like we said, payment history makes up 35% of your score. So if you are regularly making on-time payments on your credit card, it is slowly going to bring up your credit score if you're keeping your utilization low, and also it's going to help create more accounts open and bring up your credit age as, you know, time has passed. So you're going to have all those old accounts that you had signed up for to create that credit age. Now, for me personally, like I said, credit cards dropped me by 20 points for my credit score. Now, that is a high amount, but in less than 6 months, it has also gone up by 18 points. Now, that being said, you're probably like, well, that's less than it dropped it, so how is it worth it? Well, for one, it was less than 6 months, so that is not that long, and only recently did I start trying to actually bring my score up. I know, bad on my part, but either way, that's not that long of a time period, and also it's going to continue. I'm building a foundation for bringing my credit score up as I make on-time payments, keep my utilization low, and then that being said, I also believe that credit cards have great sign-up bonuses, great cash back. They pay me to spend my money that I was already going to spend. So that being said, if you are looking to sign up for more cards or learn about what cards you should get at first, what benefits they have, I have other videos that I will link down below on credit cards and all their benefits and all their information. But that being said, if you didn't already learn from this video, credit cards can bring down your credit score, and not just in the short term. They can long term affect your credit score, which can affect your ability to rent, affect your ability to borrow money, affect so many things. And yeah, you might not believe in credit scores, you might think it's stupid or whatever it is, but it does affect your life. So use credit cards in the right way so that hopefully your credit score can go up and continue to go up. We can all hit that golden 800 number. And please, before you go, hit the like button and the subscribe button down below. I post new videos every single Wednesday helping you figure out adulting. Well, I'm attempting to figure it out myself.